Good evening from Israel. I'm David Menser, the spokesman, and welcome to this special broadcast, Roaring Lion Unfiltered. Thank you to everyone for joining us here today from Israel and, of course, from Jewish communities around the world. We are very pleased to see participants connecting from different countries and time zones. Now, this special briefing is organized by the Ministry of Diaspora Affairs and Combating Anti-Semitism in cooperation with the Government Press Office. Our goal this evening is to provide clear, accurate and professional updates about Operation Roaring Lion and to strengthen the connection between the State of Israel and Jewish communities worldwide during this important and rapidly evolving moment. Now, in recent days, many people the world over have been closely following developments and searching for reliable information and context. So today's discussion is intended precisely to help address that need. We will hear directly from professional experts, a government minister and representatives who will share their insights into the strategic context surrounding Iran and explain Israel's actions and objectives as part of this operation. Now, following the presentations, we'll also open up to a Q&A session, which will include questions that have been submitted in advance by participants. But it is our honor today to host distinguished speakers who will bring both their operational and strategic expertise. First, we'll hear an overview of the current situation from Minister Amichai Shikli sitting next to me and the operational perspective on Israel's actions within Operation Roaring Lion. We will also hear from an expert specializing in Iran and regional security, and as well as the strategy which we're engaging with our regional activities and the possible implications of the latest developments. We'll then hear from a representative of the Israel Defense Forces Spokesman's Unit, who will be providing additional information and an operational overview of the current situation in Israel. Together, these different perspectives will give a fuller understanding, we believe, of the current developments. But to begin with, it is my pleasure and honor indeed to invite our first speaker, Israel's Minister for Diaspora Affairs and Combating Anti-Semitism, Amichai Shikli. Minister Shikli leads Israel's efforts to strengthen the connection between the State of Israel and Jewish communities around the world, and also to confront the global epidemic of anti-Semitism that we're seeing globally. He's already been very active in this war over the last 2 weeks, appearing on Fox, on Sky News, on many Indian channels as well, representing his country with eloquence and with detail. Now, the annual Global Conference for Combating Anti-Semitism, which is now in its second year, has become the worldwide forum to highlight and combat this epidemic. And that global conference was created and curated by Amichai Shikli. It's attracted leaders from across the world, and of course it has gained praise from our Prime Minister. So at a time when events in the Middle East are being closely followed by Jewish communities everywhere, his ministry is working closely with partners around the world to ensure communities receive accurate information and feel supported during this critical moment. So, Minister Shikli, thank you very much for joining us. I'm going to ask you a few questions, if I may, that have been submitted by the audience. The first one, which I think everyone wants to know, and it's being raised in the media as well, I'm sure you must have faced it, and that is the simple question: why did the State of Israel go to war in this conflict now?
So first, I want to say to all the people from the Jewish communities who are watching that we are following very closely the events in West Bloomfield, Michigan, this horrific attempt for a serious terror attack that was miraculously, by the courage of the security guards, prevented the disaster, and also following very closely what's happening in Canada, especially in Toronto. And we are highly concerned from what we're seeing in Canada and from the lack of actions from the Canadian government regarding the serious threats that we are seeing with three events of fire that was shot into synagogues in Toronto in the past months, including also the U.S. Embassy. And I think that the event in Canada are alarming, and I'm very concerned that we can witness another Bondi Beach kind of event of terror attack in Canada. The writing is on the wall, and this is very, very alarming. Now, regarding your question regarding the war, so it's not accurate to say that we went now on a war, because this war started 2.5 years ago when the Iranian major project of annihilating the state of Israel was starting to be pushed forward with the attack and the massacre of Hamas on October 7th. Hamas is a proxy of Iran, sponsored by Iran, mainly by Iran. The day after, you had Hezbollah on October 8th, and then you have the Houthis, and then you have Iran itself. After the elimination of Ismail Haniyeh, dozens of ballistic missiles were fired to Israel by Iran itself. So you have this entire terror arms of Iran that launched war against the state of Israel, and this is a continuation of this war. It's not a new war. Roaring Lion, it's not a new war. It's the continuation of our response to October 7th, to October 8th, to the Houthis, and so on and so on. Now, the specific timing is due to mainly the fact that we have been able to see with the intelligence that we have that Iran is trying to take what's left from its nuclear capabilities and to take it deep into the ground to a position in which nor Israel nor the U.S. would be able to dismantle Iran nuclear capabilities. This is reason number 2. And number 3 is the alert and the intelligence that we had that there is a preemptive attack that might occur from the Iranian, and therefore, in order to take the advantage and to be the first to strike and not wait and to suffer casualties, that was the tactical, let's say, reason. So these are the 3 main components for the answer. Why are we fighting this very, very important and successful war?
Thank you very much, Minister. We know that we're only 15 days in right now into this branch of the war, as you described. But I wanted to ask you to look into the future and if you foresee an expansion of the Abraham Accords, the peace deals which Israel has established, brokered by President Trump, with other countries in our region, whether you can see, as a result of this joint military action, an expansion of the Abraham Accords.
So we hope to see the Abraham Accords expand. We hope to see Kuwait joining. We hope to see Saudi Arabia joining. For just to give you an example, Saudi Arabia has made a contract of defense with Pakistan. I don't see that Pakistan is providing any assistance to Saudi Arabia, so it's time for the Saudis to re-examine their alliance and who is a serious player in the region and who are just. It's just words. It also an opportunity for Qatar to re-examine its course and its policies. They were so close with the Iranian, both on the economic and the diplomatic level, and they are being attacked by the Iranians themselves. So maybe it's time to rethink the strategy of Qatar that were aligned with Hamas, with Iran, and I hope that we see major changes after this war is over. I think we have tremendous achievements so far. Almost the entire defense system of the Iranian army is destroyed. 70% of the ballistic missiles, 90% of the arsenal of Hezbollah was shrinked. The annihilation of the naval capabilities of Iran, the air force of Iran, and so forth and so forth. And therefore, I think it is a crucial and important war. And I haven't mentioned one very, very important aspect. The Iranian people, tens of thousands of Iranian, mainly young men and women in Iran, who went to the street to protest, were massacred by the terror regime of Iran. Unfortunately, we haven't seen Harvard or Columbia students going and protesting in favor of the freedom of the Iranian people. We didn't see the streets of Europe or the streets of New York, and we didn't see the crowd supporting the Iranian people. But this war is also to support the Iranian people and the freedom of the Iranian people. And when we are speaking about a regime change, it's very important to say we've promised help.
Yeah.
President Trump promised help,
Yeah.
and he walked the talk. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu promised help. We walk the talk, and we are providing help. And you can see what's going on with the Basij
Yeah.
now on the streets. We are targeting the Basij. You can see the Basij always looking to the sky
Yeah.
to look for American and Israeli drones. So I think that supporting this crucial help and assistance for the Iranian people is very, very important. But we need to say the regime change can only happen by the Iranian people themselves.
Absolutely, I think you're right. I think what the result of this war will be to open that door so that
Absolutely.
the Iranian people can grab hold of
Yeah.
freedom.
Create the condition
absolutely.
for a regime change.
Yeah, because we know that I think 80% of Iran's people are against the regime. So they deserve that freedom. They've suffered a lot. So this will open the door so they can grab hold of it. And the last question we've had is specifically about this war and whether we have 15 days on succeeded in making it clear to the world that Iran is not only a strategic threat to Israel. You know, we're getting missiles here, drones here, but it's not only a strategic threat to Israel, but to the entire world. Do you think that message is getting across?
So it's not a question of messaging. We've seen throughout the war the Houthis
Yeah.
harming trade ships in the Red
yeah,
Sea,
absolutely.
harming this very crucial world trade route leading to the Suez Canal. And now we can see what's happening with the Strait of Hormuz. And also we see endless attacks against the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, etc., and the history that is well known for all those who have learned just a little bit
Yeah.
about Iran, and from the beginning, from kidnapping the staff members of the American embassy, later on the attacks against U.S. Marine base in Beirut,
yeah.
and the French, and endless terror attacks. And one more thing which is important, recently we had this amazing operation of the U.S. In Venezuela to remove the dictator Maduro. The drug
Yeah.
industry
Yeah. Entire network.
in Latin America
Yeah.
is heavily connected to Hezbollah.
Absolutely.
Hezbollah is a major player, and Hezbollah is an arm of the Iranian terror regime. So it's an ecosystem of terror that goes far up to Latin America, and it's way behind the issue of Israel and Iran, Hezbollah and Hamas.
Absolutely. I think that's an excellent appraisal of the current situation. And I think, I mean, we can see it right now with the Straits of Hormuz. You know, Iran are trying to blackmail the world now. Imagine what power they would have
With the
if
nuclear
they had,
power.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely.
That would be all the, exponentially worse. Great. Thank you very much,
Thanks so
Minister
much, David.
Shikli. Thank you very much for your leadership on this subject, and thank you very much for the work you're doing, bringing the two sides, Israel and, of course, the Jewish communities around the world
Am
together.
Yisrael Chai.
Am Yisrael Chai, exactly.
And
as you
kicking.
say. And kicking. Am Yisrael Chai and kicking, as the minister says. Absolutely right. So our next guest now is Dr. Dina Lisensky, a Middle East expert and a senior researcher at Tel Aviv University, she will provide additional context regarding Iran and the broader regional dynamics shaping the events that we're witnessing right now. Dr. Dina is a Middle East expert. She holds a PhD in Islam. She also in Middle Eastern history and geopolitics. She's very much a sought-after guest on many TV stations around the world, and is also on many TV panels and, of course, on many publications as well. You've got a sterling resume here. You're a strategic consultant for various security bodies in Israel, in the in the EU, and of course in the USA. And of course you're a valuable and member of advisory boards of security and anti-terrorism think tanks while you teach at Tel Aviv University and serve as a senior research fellow on terrorism and radical Islamist movements at the Shalom Center in Jerusalem and the IISMR in Sofia and the ISGAP in New York. Now, Dina, you're also part of the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs volunteer speaker program, and you also, remarkably, speak 8 languages. So we're all in awe. We'd love to hear your analysis of the current situation.
Thank you, David. I will take your clicker
Yes,
before I
of
start
course.
speaking
Yeah,
all the
absolutely
8
right.
languages. Yeah. Thanks. All right. So in order to understand better what is actually happening with Iran, we need to go a little bit into history and to see why it happened. So in the year of 1979, when Ayatollah Khomeini is actually taking his turn and orchestrating a revolution in Iran, which brings us to an Islamic State within Iran. The funny thing is that when the Islamic State emerged in 2013 in Iraq and Syria, we, meaning people who actually deal a lot with expertise in Middle Eastern affairs, were a bit perplexed because there is already an Islamic State in the Middle East, which is obviously Iran. We need to see, here we can see how Khomeini is returning to Iran from exile in France in 1979, which brings us to a new Iran, which is actually an Islamic Republic. And this is why we're not referring to Iran as Iran, but to an Islamic Republic of Iran, which is actually very important because the real Iran is not an Islamic Republic. It's not a religious state.
We've seen that.
Yes, and there are 2 main theses of modern Shiite theology that Khomeini is bringing to the table. The first would be Vilayat al-Faqih, which means loyalty to the religious leader, or actually the rule of the religious leader, which actually means that if you have 2 leaders, one would be a secular and the second would be a religious, you have a religious obligation, a moral obligation, according to, specifically here we're talking about Shia, but also in more fundamentalist Sunnah, you have to choose, you have to elect the religious one. So this is the first thesis. The second is more important to us. Why? Because you have to export the Islamic Revolution. Now, where do you export the Islamic Revolution? Of course, you export it throughout the region, first of all among the Shiites. So we need to see that the Shiite proxies and the axis of the Shiite pro-Iranian proxies, such as Iran and Hezbollah, and Iraqi militias, and Houthis, by the way, who are, of course, Shiites in Yemen, they were all made as parts of Iranian, let's say, not just a regime, but of the Iranian concept of exporting the Islamic Revolution. You needed to do that in order to make it like a territory that is unending of the Shiite proxies. And there is another question here. How about Hamas and the Islamic Jihad? We're talking about Palestinian resistance movements, terrorist movements that are actually Sunni movements. So how could they be proxies of Iran? And the minister said that Hamas is actually a proxy by Iran, and he's absolutely right. Because Hamas, being a Sunni movement, actually got a lot of funding from Iran and got a lot of subsidies from Iran and managed, in fact, to do a lot of things that and actually made it happen for the Sunni proxies, and they just became the other arm of the Shiite proxies of Iran. So we speak about that. We can see that there is a crescent there, and this crescent is actually existent as a ring of fire around Israel, as you can see. The threat that comes from Iran, it comes in various directions. The first direction would be the Iranian people themselves. Of course, there's a war that is being waged on the Iranian people. We saw the last resurgence of this war during the January riots, when over 30,000 people were murdered by the Iranian Islamic regime. After that, we speak about the fact that there are also the Arab countries. There are Sunni countries, also in the region, especially in the Gulf, that have been suffering so much from the Iranian regime. And only the third, let's say, circle are obviously the US and the Western countries, and of course Israel, that are hated by the Islamic regime. Of course, one of the mottos, of the most important mottos of the Islamic regime, is death to America and death to Israel. It is based upon the understanding that there are 2 Satans. The first is the great Satan, which is the US, which is, of course, the Western, or the embodiment of the Western civilization, and the smaller Satan, which is Israel.
So in essence, they have to get through Israel first before they get to America and to Europe.
They regard Israel as the proxy of the West in the Middle East, and this is the reason why. So what actually happened after October 7th is a domino effect. The aftermath of October 7th is changing all this ring of fire that we've been talking about and changing the balance of powers in the Middle East. First of all, we know, of course, that, let's go back to Hassan Nasrallah. In July 2023, just a few months before October 7th attack, Hezbollah's leader Hassan Nasrallah is saying Israel has lost its deterrent potential. Beyond the border, fear reigns. This is what he says, and after that, it is a sort of a cue to all the other proxies to start working on an offensive against Israel. The offensive was supposed to come from various parts of the Middle East, of course, from the north itself and from the south, and Hamas just, pulled the trigger, maybe a little bit too early, which brought us to this domino effect that eliminated also Hezbollah in the year of 2024, that eliminated, of course, the Assad regime in December 2024. Now, of course, the Assad regime was not eliminated by Israel, but by the Sunni proxies of Turkey. Of course, we're speaking about Abu Muhammad al-Julani, nowadays the president of Syria, whose name is, of course, Ahmad al-Shara, and he is representing basically the Syrian branch of Al-Qaeda at first. So we need to understand that as well. We're talking about Sunnis against Shiites, and he is bringing to collapse the Assad regime, which is also was also a proxy by Iran, which brings us, of course, to a new axis. There are actually two Sunni axes that exist today. So the first axis would be, let's say, pro-Muslim Brotherhood axis, which is basically Turkey and Qatar. The second axis would be a more moderate axis of the Sunni countries, such as, of course, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and et cetera, et cetera. So we understand that there is already a new balance of power in the Middle East due to the domino effect of October 7th and the war with Iran that we are experiencing today, and that we experienced also in June, the 12-day war in June. It changes all of the balance in the region also because after the war begins, first of all, we speak about the changes in, or possible changes, in the IRGC and in the Ayatollah regime. Khamenei is being eliminated, and part of the IRGC are being eliminated. We do understand that this is something that should not be done or cannot be done in a matter of weeks. We do understand that we're speaking about months, maybe years of the regime that should be, of the collapsing of the regime. It should fall at some point. We do not know when. However, of course, it is a part of a broader, let's say, a broader maneuver that should bring this regime to its, doom. And the main question I think that remains is what comes next. So first of all, I'd like to say that there are a lot of potential threats that still are coming from Iran. Many of them, and since we are speaking now to representatives of the Jewish communities all over the world, they should know that the Iranian regime is actually targeting Jewish communities, Jewish strategic objects and strategic institutions. Their goal is to harm as much as they can.
Where they are now, not in Israel,
where
around
they are
the world.
now, around the world. And the thing is that it's a sort of a paradox. The less they can do against Israel, the more they will try to do against the Jewish communities all over the world. And also, of course, the Western institutions as well. We're not speaking only about Jews here. We're speaking about a potential threat, actually a real threat, to all of the Western civilization.
Wow, that's a lot to think about there. Absolutely fascinating. So we've been given some questions by our audience, and I want to share some of those questions with you here. And the first one, of course, was the near miraculous first action of Israel together with the US in the first 40 seconds of this war, the death of the supreme leader Ali Khamenei, and also many others of the top echelon of Iran, and what that means for the stability of the regime. Is that enough to bring it apart? Could the current war lead to the entire regime's collapse from within, or might it still, as many sort of pessimistic commentators have said, will this cause the Iranian people to consolidate around the existing regime to give it public support? What's your view on that?
Okay, so there are 2 points to take on. The first one would be the momentum that was a bit lost during January riots.
Right.
Over 30,000 people were murdered brutally by the regime.
Gunned down in the streets.
Of course, yes. And even more people were incarcerated, tortured to death, and still are being executed, some of them, by the regime itself.
And those must have been the vanguards. Those must have been the activists.
They were the activists.
Right.
They were the vanguards. They should have gotten more support, of
Right.
course. However, we are living in a world that develops all the time.
Yeah.
Things are evolving. So if in my understanding, if the regime should fall, it should fall, of course, after a certain period of time. We do speak about the fact that today we are in a war that could actually bring a serious change, not only in the regime, but also in the state of mind of the Iranian people. And this is our hope, actually, that the Iranian people would start a new role in Iran itself and would be able to change the regime by themselves, of course, with the help of the US, of Israel, and of many other countries that would like to join and to eliminate this murderous regime.
Yeah. No, as we said, we're opening that door to allow them to go through, to grab hold of freedom.
Absolutely.
Which is what they deserve so much, of course. Now, the second question we've had is whether is the whole phenomenon, whether you feel shocked by this and whether Israel expected this, because Iran has, of course, attacked almost all of its neighbors, from Saudi Arabia to the United Arab Emirates to many other countries, and how you feel that affects the regime's alliances in the region and their stability in the region. What effect has that had?
So first of all of the Arab countries of the Gulf were highly concerned with the stability. The question of stability is actually a very important question in the Middle East and, of course, in the Gulf, where people are not acquainted with a lot of wars, in the Gulf itself. So for them, it was very important to maintain peace and stability in almost at any cost with Iran. Saudi Arabia and Iran were in a sort of a Cold War for over a decade. This Cold War has ended and was brokered by China in 2023. Right, So we do understand that this brought Saudi Arabia and Iran a little bit more closer. However, this is not a real closeness. We do not speak about a new ideology or a new dawn for the Middle East. Obviously, there are a lot of misunderstandings. Obviously, there are a lot of different interests that we should take into consideration here. So the fact that Iran is attacking the Arab countries of the Gulf should be a huge concern for the Arab states. They should be engaged more in this specific war. Of course, they would not be able to speak about it freely, and there is a sort of a diplomatic tie that should be taken into consideration as well. So we hope that they would join, but we do understand why they are still reluctant.
And what did you make of the president, I think, this week, apologizing for attacking the region or the countries around the region, and then almost immediately for them continuing to attack the region? How was that received?
This is what we call quantum diplomacy.
Quantum diplomacy?
Yes, quantum diplomacy or quantum politics. It means that you can say one thing or try to be in a sort of an alliance with someone and still to attack them. So this is a possibility that is actually real for the Iranian regime, but now also we do understand that this is more complex than just being in a sort of an alliance constantly with the Arab states. Obviously, there are certain Iranian interests that should be made absolutely understandable for the Arab states. Iran is going, it just goes absolutely full-time, full-blown war with the Arab states right now. They should understand that.
Right. So the last question that we've had from our audience is about whether the current war will effectively mark the final chapter, which is what, of course, we all want of Iran's nuclear policy and its funding of proxy forces. Do you feel that this is the end of the Iranian regime?
Well, it depends.
Right.
It depends on many obstacles that are around the corner. First of all, it depends on on how we end this war, or on which stage the U.S. ends this war. If President Trump decides to end this war before the nuclear program is absolutely finished, this could be, of course, a new window, a new possibility for Iran to go on and develop the nuclear program. But the thing is that we need to understand that if we are not finished with the nuclear program right now, there would be a new one. Also, if the regime doesn't fall, there would be a new nuclear program because Iran is not ready to give up on this idea.
Absolutely fascinating. I think that's given us a real insight using your expertise about what's going on, and so much of this isn't carried by the international media, I feel. So that sort of background briefing you've just given us, I think, is absolutely key to everyone out there. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you, David.
Good. Now, we're saving the best for last. We will now move to our next speaker. It's SFC Kelly Odes, who is the head of International Messaging, Communications and Strategy Department at the IDF Spokesman's Unit. She will give an operational update together with an overview of the current situation. So, Kelly, over to you.
Thank you.
Welcome to the panel.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Thank you.
I'm sure by now in the program you've already heard a lot about what's going on, different opinions and different views, but I'll perhaps provide a little bit of clarity and understanding from the IDF perspective.
Perfect.
So as we know, this conflict didn't just begin now in February. This began 47 years ago when the Iranians declared there will be no State of Israel, the destruction of the State of Israel.
Yeah.
So we know that the Iranians, their strategy, their long-term strategy has been really, in my eyes, two things. One, patience.
Yeah.
And two, it's really been ideology, ideology of elimination.
Yeah.
And they've carried this out through multiple ways, as we've learned, through regional proxies, through their ballistic missiles and nuclear program. And so I think that it all culminates into this kind of historic moment where we really hadn't had an opportunity not only to stop Iran's threats to Israel, but to the region, to the world. And we took this opportunity together with the United States in an amazing, opening strike. And I think that, one thing that we've been trying to tell the world, and I personally am in the IDF spokesperson unit.
Yeah.
I have to tell the world our story, our narrative, try to get our messaging out there, and we know that it's not so friendly. It's a hostile environment. We've had 7 physical fronts in this war, but the 8th was definitely the media.
Communications war, absolutely.
Yeah, and one thing that I've been saying since the beginning, since October 7th, was Iran is a threat not only to Israel, it's a threat to the world.
Absolutely.
Their ballistic missiles, the range of their ballistic missiles crosses 3 continents, 2 billion people within that range.
Yeah.
And so
they've already hit Europe.
Yeah, they've
absolutely.
aimed at bases, at Middle Eastern countries. So it's clear that now we know Iran is a threat, and they've proved it. Their actions have proved it to the world.
Absolutely.
So I think that what we have to look at now is how was this operation planned, and what are we actually trying to achieve here? So I think that when you're looking from an IDF perspective as what's going on the ground, the most crucial hours were those first 100 hours.
Absolutely.
What happened during those 100 hours were what we call the enablers. They were the strikes on the aerial defense systems in a surprise strike, taking out the leadership in 40 seconds, taking out the ballistic missiles so that we could reduce the amount of missiles that were immediately fired to Israel. These were all setting the conditions within the first 100 hours for what was next to come. But the goal of what is of this operation as a whole is much deeper than that. We are now in the second phase of this operation after those 100 hours, where we're going right to the roots. Not only taking out their launches, but also taking out their production facilities so that they can't produce in the future. We're taking out nuclear sites, we're taking out satellite assets, research and development, so that it's not only, from a perspective of can we push off this threat for a few years, but for the long term. Can we completely disarm and take away their capability not only to produce ballistic missiles that threaten Israel, but ballistic missiles that threaten the Middle East. And we know that their production capabilities, they make weapons that get sent to Lebanon, that get sent to Gaza and Yemen.
Absolutely.
So that is all really part of our operation at the moment. And we're working very systematically. We have, thousands of targets. One by one, we're going through. It's really an organized, professional operation that is quite historic.
And tell me about a little bit about the coordination with the US. What can you share with us about that?
Yeah, well, this is shoulder-to-shoulder communication, historic.
Amazing.
I think that never have the two militaries operated on such a close coordinating level, and we hear it from our American partners. The strongest air forces in the world are operating together in the skies of Tehran. Full aerial superiority. And I think that, we're learning every day. So the more we learn, the more our advantage grows, and the weaker Iran gets.
Yes. Absolutely fascinating analysis, Kelly, because you're talking about a comprehensive takedown of all the levers of power, from production of the weapons which threaten us to every single aspect of their hold of Iranian society. Now, we've got a few questions here, and you've already, I think, highlighted what we've achieved so far with the operation in Iran, the almost total control of the skies over Iran. But there's also been something which has shocked a lot of people and perhaps hasn't had a lot of publicity outside Israel, something we know very, very well. That is the use of cluster bombs, cluster munitions. We've seen that in Israel. I wanted to ask you what you feel the effect of that has been. Are these weapons illegal? Are they using them against us a lot? Why are they doing that?
Yeah, well, the use of cluster munitions towards a civilian populated area is a war crime.
That's what they're doing. That's precisely what they're doing.
Precisely what they're doing. It's a violation of international law. And, they realize that it's hard for us to, once we intercept, or if it is intercepted, it doesn't matter. There's still many explosions that drop, and they can cover a radius that's pretty wide. Of miles. And this can cause more damage. Although the direct ballistic missile, when it hits, it causes greater damage, there's a psychological aspect to these cluster munitions, that it's, more dispersed, that more zones of strikes, of damage, exactly. And I think that, we've raised our voice about this. We've told the world this is a war crime. Iran are sending this towards populated centers, and I think that it should get more press and more coverage on that. Yeah,
absolutely. And we're all feeling it in Israel's towns and cities as well. And we know that when these things fall, I joined the Prime Minister when we went to, for instance, Bet Shemesh, and where that synagogue was hit. And, I looked around, there were no military bases there whatsoever. This was an attack on civilians, exactly where Israel's people live, as opposed to what the Iranians are doing, as opposed to what we're doing in Israel. We're targeting the regime itself, the terrorist masterminds themselves. Let me ask you about Lebanon and Hezbollah, because Hezbollah made the catastrophic decision to get involved in this. Now, we always talk about Hezbollah being the forward operating arm of Iran. They are essentially Iran on our northern border. Was there intelligence info, and is there now intelligence info about the coordination between Iran and Hezbollah?
Yes, definitely. Firstly, we can say that just in 2025, nearly $1 billion was transferred from Iran to the proxies, but mainly to Hezbollah.
Money which could have been spent on the Iranian people, which is what they're complaining about.
On the Iranian people who don't have water, or even on the Lebanese people who are getting, the money of their state is, could also be...
They've turned Lebanon into a failed state, essentially.
Exactly. And so at the price of the civilians of the Middle East, of Lebanon and of Iran, Hezbollah have been receiving this money, but we are seeing a new phenomenon, which is, simultaneous rocket and missile barrages.
So real coordination.
When there's sirens in the north, there's sirens coming from Iran. It seems too coincidental that every single time it seems the same.
No, absolutely.
So we definitely can see cooperation.
And so what do you feel are the plans moving forward? How's the IDF going to counter this threat, particularly when it comes to Lebanon?
Yeah, well, we definitely learned our lessons from October 7th and October 8th. When Hezbollah joined on October 8th, they were right on the borders, firing directly into the communities, meters away. We've changed perspective. We know that there needs to be IDF forces between civilian communities and Hezbollah. And so our IDF troops are now situated in various positions on the border, forward defense positions, in which they can be the ones who meet Hezbollah before Hezbollah meet our civilians. And we are continuing to strike. We're watching the rockets come out of south of Litani River.
Right.
That is where Hezbollah is forbidden to be according to many international agreements.
We've already got that agreement with the Lebanese government. People ask us all the time, what can the Lebanese government do? Well, they committed precisely to disarm Hezbollah, but they haven't done that.
Exactly. And so, but the IDF is, we've taken our lessons. We've learned our lessons. Yeah. And now what we are doing is we're pushing the threat. We are striking. We have a new defense policy overall.
Right.
I call it the 3P policy.
Okay, go ahead.
Preventative, preemptive,
preemptive,
and proactive.
Proactive. Okay.
We're not waiting anymore.
Right.
We can't watch them gain the capabilities.
Yeah.
We know they have the intentions.
Yeah.
That will never go away.
Yeah.
We have to ensure that we take them out as soon as they get their capabilities while we're watching them in order for it to not get Ghana on our borders until it's too late.
Fascinating, Kelly. But I think what you're saying is that Israel, after October 7th, will not let a genocidal force sit on our border again. We simply won't. We've learnt our lesson, essentially.
Exactly.
Kelly, that's been absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much for that briefing. I think you've been spoilt today to get a full range of opinion from the Minister to Kelly in the IDF Spokesman's Unit, but also a regional, an expert on the region. So thank you, of course, to all of our speakers for their insightful briefing. So as we bring this to a close, this broadcast, we just want to emphasize to everyone listening around the world that this war in Israel is accompanied not just by military confrontation, it is also by a significant battle over the international public opinion. That battle is happening online, it's happening in the media, and today it is crucial that our Jewish communities, our allies, and also journalists around the world receive reliable, verified, and up-to-date information about what is happening in Israel from a trusted source. So that is precisely why we'll continue to create direct platforms for dialogue where experts, as you've heard tonight, and official representatives of Israel can share facts, explanations, and also the professional analysis of the current war, the current situation, which is so sadly lacking out there, which you've got a taste of tonight. So from our perspective, we'll continue to hold such meetings, just as you've heard tonight, in many different languages, as you've heard tonight, in order to strengthen that connection between Israel on the one side and our Jewish communities and the supporters of Israel around the world, to ensure that you get access to accurate and timely information. So with that, thank you for joining us today. There'll be more of these. And of course, thank you for joining us and for your support. Thank you. Bye-bye.